Let the waitress put the chairs up. Let the glasses that you broke form a picture of our leader with a halo made of smoke. Let the golden oldie station crackle and come through. With a final benediction, we'll hum along too before we say goodnight. Let me talk about the ball game and the weather show we care. Like a sound we didn't notice until it stopped and left us there. With the traffic and our heartbeats beating in straight time. Let our hatred and affection march in the same line before we say goodnight. Oh, protect our secret handshake once more with feeling. Let the toast to absent members push through the ceiling before we say goodnight. Before we say goodnight. And let our arcing wrecking ball complain. I hate Winnipeg. Howdy, folks. I'm back. It's been a few weeks. I've been here and there and everywhere. Was in Canada for a bit, which was nice. Never been to the eastern half of Canada before, so that was fun. Toronto, fine. The definition of mediocrity, and that's cool. It's better than being the definition of crap. But Montreal, muy bien, très bien. Hate to give it to the frogs, but it's definitely it still feels like a city in a way that most American ones just have stopped feeling like because of just the endless march of capital and whatnot. I did see Barbie, and I don't want to be a bro about it, but pretty bad. Not a good film. Uh, uh, thank you. It's no thank you. Uh, I mean, if you're gonna sell out, right? Like, and just embrace uh, the realities of having to do IP and sequel-based films to have a career in Hollywood, do it the way Ben Wheatley did it when he just said, "Sure, I'll make The Meg 2, whatever." Instead of being like, "No, we're gonna turn this into a statement about something." About what? I don't know. Uh, but yeah, maybe it's just because I'm a guy, and it wasn't for me. It was for ladies, and so I respect women. Well, women are beautiful. Whatever they thought of the movie, sure, that's my opinion. I don't care. I haven't seen the Meg 2 though yet. I didn't like the first one that much. A big problem with the Meg thing is the Meg is so big, and its mouth is so big that it doesn't like chew people up in a cool way. He just swallows them, which is less cinematic, less uh, visceral. If only there was a way for like the Meg to like eat a bunch of people at once, maybe, get in there and just start chomping through, uh, a wave pool or something. I don't know. I'll probably see it now and in a airplane or something. Mugshot, iconic or not? Well, I mean, it is definitely going to be one of the more famous images of the 21st century. First time a former president, put in front of the bill like that. So, in that sense, of course, it's going to be iconic, as opposed to the separate question of did he slay. I don't know. I mean, as with almost everything with Trump, that answer is predetermined by your pre-existing relationship with Trump. I think that there's a dream though on the right and on the left, or the liberals, I guess. I mean, there's Democrats and Republicans at the end of the day. You just one team or the other, regardless of how you want to gild your political lily and flatter yourself with radical ideology. There's Democrats and Republicans because those are the two projects you can actually participate in democratically. Everything else you want to participate in is, if not illegal, at least in some sort of friction with the state or with capital. The only frictionless political engagement point is voting and participating in party politics, and that means Democrats or Republicans. So let's just get rid of left and right and say Democrats and Republicans. For a lot of Republicans, they think this is going to make him look badass, and a lot of people who maybe were on the fence are now going to like him. Democrats say no, this is going to finally like reveal him. He's in stark uh, terms as the criminal he is. Everyone has made up their decision about Trump. It doesn't fucking matter. God, it's so annoying that they didn't weigh him. This is what a two-tier people. Uh, Trump supporters are complaining about a two-tiered justice system. It's a two-tiered justice system when you get to show up for court and just say, "Yeah, I'm 215 pounds. Just trust me," and they just go, "Okay." But it could be real. I mean, Ozempic is out there now. You could imagine Trump getting on it. He does look meltier lately, which is a really bad move for him aesthetically because those Ozempic people don't really look that good. You just kind of look like a melted candle. But yeah, they can. There's going to be 500 court cases and whatnot, and there's going to be trials. Some of them are going to be televised. And you know what? It's still going to come down to basically a coin flip that will be determined more than anything by like uh, the first quarter of 2024's economic output. Although maybe not even that anymore. Maybe inflation in the first quarter of 2024, because it's very clear that attitudes towards the government, towards Biden, are fully detached from conventional understandings of a good economy. GDP, all that stuff, unemployment, these have been, on paper, the kind of things that should lead you to have a, you know, around 50% approval rating, whereas Biden is stuck around 40. And it really was the Afghanistan, if you look at the numbers, it was Afghanistan where he dropped. And the thing is, we stopped thinking and talking about Afghanistan within a month, which was obviously predictable. But because the ambient temperature, I guess, is just as miserable as it was before that, nobody felt the opinion if they had, nobody felt the need when they're getting polled who had decided fuck Biden after Afghanistan never got the urge to be like, well, look at this GDP growth, look at this employment. I'm going to change back to being pro Biden. They never switched back because inflation is high, purchasing power is down. And that is for a country that is made up, yes, of workers and owners and capitalists and laborers, uh, objectively, but subjectively by consumers, where politics is organized around a consumer choice and where American flourishing is defined by consumer choices. A world where your mortgage is more expensive and your dollar buys less is a bad economy, regardless of anything else. And now the Biden administration is making this insane attempt to like basically make Americans eat their spinach with this Bidenomics push. They're like, no, no, you idiots, the economy's good. Don't you understand that? And then trying to connect it to him, which just completely ignores the way that political opinions are formed. You cannot set the terms by which people are evaluating you as president. You can only you can't set the terms. You can respond to changing situations. And the way that the Biden administration, if they wanted to like not lose, well, one thing is get rid of the 9 million-year-old crook who is at the top of the ticket, but then to talk about abortion and cultural issues, which have seemed to have affected a persistent uh, shift among college educated voters away from the GOP. And that means important swing suburbs are now much more likely to just be reflexively Democratic than they were before Dobbs. But they don't want that world. They want one where they can point to what they've actually accomplished, and say, this is why you need me. You don't want it. Although the only real case for the Democrats is a negative one, which is also true for Republicans. They only have a negative case for their voters. Stop the worst people from getting in. That is the only real case. But they don't want to consciously pitch on that because it disempowers them. And part of it, I think, really does come down to the fact that Biden's surrounded by a bunch of people who lived in a different time. They lived in a different, in a different Democratic Party with a different media, a media that could operate around central, agreed upon premises that would permeate every level of American news consumer, regardless of party. That's gone. We now have niche. Uh, we have niches, and that's it. And the economy is politically perceived through a consumption lens. Because yes, people also are losing and getting jobs, all that shit that is supposed to power our understanding of the economy. But those are not seen, I don't think, as political outcomes. If you get a job or lose a job, it is up to the fates. It's up to nature. It's up to God, because that's what we've done to the market. We've turned it into God. But only, of course, the part of the market where we are disempowered laborers, so that our disempowered labor can be uh, can be our disempowered labor uh, can be perpetuated without accumulating any like real residual class-based alienation. But how much things cost at the pump, in the grocery store, where you are making the active choice to consume, those are places where politics still lives. So you can see those as political choices made by somebody. That's why they had those stickers with Biden pointing at the gas readout saying, I did that. Now, there was a time when things like employment were considered political, but we have surpassed that time. We don't live there anymore. But these politicians, especially Democratic ones who are in their 80s, still do. That's the world they grew up with. That's the Democratic Party, the bread and butter, economy stupid, James Carville Democratic Party these people grew up with. But the very people who rang that bell for so long dismantled the political uh, control over markets and then had to adjust what the political was away from things like employment. So now, wherever we are, we experience the economy as workers, our alienation, whether it's getting a job, whether it's losing a job, not being able to find a job, having bad conditions at work, those things are felt natural. They're naturalized. There might be causes for them, but they are particular causes within a apolitical reality. everything that we do economically that comes from a position of empowered consumption reflects our perceptions of ourselves as empowered political subjects, empowered political consumers, I should say, of media and then of choices in the ballot box and in the voting booth. And so now this is a different world where there is no way that you can run on low unemployment if things cost more. Because low unemployment, you're just taking credit for something that everyone understands is not in your purview. You've spent 40 years trying to convince people of that fact, that politics is limited in its ability to interact with the economy. You try to have your cake and eat it too, but over time that capacity erodes as like the reality of American life, where no voting changes any of the underlying social stuff, underlying class relationships. Politics then has to become something else. It moves where to the its own level. It finds its level, and its level is at consumption and spectacle. But even with that, they probably, thanks to honestly now, thanks to the shift in the center of gravity of the suburbs, as long as even with like this situation we're in now, with inflation that is lower than it was, but still higher than it was relatively recently, which is a relevant metric, uh, and just no accompanying like rise in income, there's going to be like a general fuck this about the Biden administration, and a Republican could win in that environment, but not Trump. And honestly, it's funny. The Republican who could win in 2024 easily, probably Mitt Romney. Because culture war issues that had helped the Republicans equalize among certain voting groups and neutralize their disadvantages is now flipped on them, and it is now hurting them. But all they have now are people who are either, I mean, honestly, Trump is an interesting case because in some ways he's the worst possible person to run against Biden, but in others he's the best because of the current Republicans who might like become president or presidential candidate. He is the one who has the most instinctive understanding that social issues are a double-edged sword. The problem is he can only make the election about himself. He can only ever do that, and that worked in 2016 with an pre-Dobbs, sort of uninitiated into what Trump means, uh, electorate. Now, 8 years later, it's a different story. But like any other Republican is going to have to run on social issues, and that's going to hurt them. They're going to gain in some places, but places that are electorally less important, like the border on Texas, the Rio Grande Valley, the Rio Grande counties in southern Texas, where you're seeing a big shift among Hispanics, non-college educated Hispanics, to Trump. But that matters way less than what's happening in white suburbs and college towns in the Midwest. But it's a coin toss either way. It is 100% coin toss. Nothing that happens between now and election day, save some sort of catastrophic economic collapse, and definitely not including Trump getting convicted, if anything, is going to change it from being basically a 50-50 race. But it is the funniest thing right now is just watching the Democrats try to insist, no, no, this is what a good economy looks like. Like it did traditionally, it did in the post 70s zero it's effectively zero uh, inflation economy, where things like price at the pump and stuff were weighed against things like employment, to now like an end stage where, in order to maintain our sanity and prevent us from like violently opposing the state and preserving our illusion of political subjectivity, we reorient our understanding of what is political to where we feel empowered. And since we feel completely disempowered at work, lowest fucking rates of unionization ever, since we feel most disempowered at work, that's the place we're going to be least likely to process our life experience through a political lens, and therefore give credit to Joe Biden if we get a job or whatever. But with the price of the pump, the price of the grocery store, where you're exercising your true franchise, that is the closest thing to the mandate of heaven an American president can try to claim. And Biden, right now, is losing the mandate of heaven. But Trump has already lost it. This is why we're in this fascinating 50-50 loser shootout. Ramaswamy bombed, according to post debate polls. This is interesting to me because I saw Ramaswamy out there. You could absolutely tell what his strategy was. And given his position, it's the smartest thing he could have done. Honestly, the only thing he could have done. Like maximal confrontation, maximal setting a distance from everyone else running, maximum attention. That's the move. That's the only move for a person in that position, who's not going to get, like, people compare him to Pete Buttigieg, but Buttigieg was lifted on the wings of the mainstream media, a mainstream media that was credulously believed and listened to by the Democrats in a way that Vivek cannot really count on, because, well, because there is obviously a conservative infrastructure, media infrastructure that has influence on its voters. It's more divided. Its loyalty is split, and Trump dominates the majority of it. In 2020, since Biden was considered a sad anachronism and Bernie was beyond the pale, Buttigieg seemed like the natural choice, the gay Obama, to the majority of the media class, and so they didn't need the CIA to tell them to do it. They self unconsciously gravitated towards him like iron filings. And that helped the fact that this no charisma dullard who really had nothing to say was able to stand out. Vivek can't do that. He's got to fucking pull the suicide vest. And he did. But as I'm watching it, I'm like, I guess I could see this working, but I could also see it wildly alienating the older suburbanites who vote for Trump, or who vote in Republican primaries. Yeah, they love that Trump is like a big, rude asshole, but they also viscerally identify at a personal level with him. So when he's a big, rude asshole, they're a big, rude asshole. Vivek is never going to be able to hold that level of personal relationship, that personification. So he just looks kind of like a whiny little prick, yelling, with like raising his hand like a fucking nerd. But he is preserving his vice presidential bona fides, because he's, by being the most Trump ass kissing one, he's making Trump most likely to let bygones be bygones and nominate him. I still doubt that Trump picks anybody who ran against him, though. There's plenty of other people that he can pick who did not run against him, like Carrie Lake. And I know she's on the outs because she took it too much for granted, and Trump got worried that she was going to upstage her. But I still think he picked somebody who did not actually run against him, because that's always a difficult uh, circle to square, to be like, I love Trump, he's the best president we've ever had, but also he can't be president again. Yeah, see, I can't. This is good. He was talking about how he liked Vivek, but he said, I can't believe this guy is running against me. I don't think he's going to be able to let that go. But in a long game, a long term goal effort to try to secure a position in the post Trump GOP, it's a smart move. I still think he's probably going to end up getting swamped by somebody, some black swan that we can't even predict, the way that Trump was very difficult to predict in 2015. Because the 2016 Democrats going into that election, Republicans rather, were completely rudderless and fucked. They were in a Democrat style malaise. They were about to dominate Jeb fucking Bush. They lost any kind of credibility with anybody, including right wingers, because of their pathetic failure to defeat the Obungler and their weddedness, their religious weddedness to conservative orthodoxy, which was no longer stirring the loins in a post-Obungler era. And you're like, what's going to happen with this party? And then fucking Trump just cannonballs into the race and changes the complexion of the whole thing. And I think that hole gets filled one way or another. And that means someone is going to fill that hole for the Republicans. I don't know who it is, though, and I don't think you can really predict. I don't think it's going to be Vivek, though. I think he's going to be like a more like a von Schlier style character, just sort of oozing in the background and eventually probably getting his wings clipped. Someone asking about Fetterman succeeding Bernie. I mean, we have to assume that the left wing standard holder within the Democratic Party post Bernie is going to be in every respect a step down because it is the recession of a movement. It's sort of like the falling away of a formation. Something else will emerge later, as I have said many times, but it probably will not be at the national democratic level. But you're still going to have these emerging polls around, the remnants of that. And I think Fetterman would have been the guy if he was not so physically shaky. I mean, after getting that stroke, he won from 5 points in a Republican leaning swing state at that point. Won Trump counties. I mean, just being a big, beefy guy, it just makes so much of the cultural uh, garb of the Democrats as a bunch of weak pussies uh, not adhere. It's just that simple, symbolism. But like, if he were to get better, Fetterman gets better, man, and really recover from the stroke and like maintain some sort of fire in the belly and desire to like push forward politically. I think he would have a better chance of getting the nomination than Bernie did, but consequently, his nomination would be have less like radical implications than Bernie's would have. Someone says Doug Burgum said he would not support a federal ban on abortion or policing teachers, about trans groomering or whatever the fuck, because of states' rights, which are both conservative and general election friendly. You'd think so. And yes, hypothetically conservative friendly, but no longer Republican friendly, no longer friendly in the eyes of these sort of Republicans for whom conflict and maximal hostility is the mark of political virtue now. And there's no amount of like logical consistency that's going to change that. You can't say, oh, but you support states' rights. They don't give a fuck. Never really did. I'm sorry. You get what you get. Sometimes we talk about the mysteries of existence. Sometimes we talk about the Senate. I do think that the hostility to public school teachers is another one of those things that does really well among the childless weirdos who go to school board meetings and yell at everybody, but not so well against those fucking suburbanites, most of whom are relatively happy with their public schools, who do the voting. Yeah, that's a very good point. Is like, what Republican pisses off Democrats the most? And it will always have to be Trump. He's number one, so that's the guy you have to support. Because if you don't support him, you are essentially giving in to them, which is, of course, the opposite of how Democrats have traditionally worked. Uh, like look at 2004, when they were so terrified of pissing off Republicans that they fled en masse from the anti-war standard bearer who was leading in the polls to a Iraq war vet or a Vietnam War veteran who had voted for the war in Iraq because they were scared of Republicans. Did not want to make them mad. They wanted to kind of sneak in the back door. That's because they had been generationally traumatized by 9/11, as everyone was in one way or another. Nikki Haley is hilarious. She's the funniest one because she so clearly just wants to will it back to being 2004. Like she just wants that old, like Pence does too, but he's mostly just doddering on. She seems to have this genuine jihadist mindset to try to get us back to national greatness foreign policy, supply side nostrums economically, free trade. It's like, yeah, sure, if you have a time machine. And yeah, a lot of people probably don't like teachers though because it's the experience of being taught sucks and it gets worse every year because the experience of being a teacher also gets worse. Hey teacher, leave those kids alone. Not for teacher. Very good. All right, let's do a pack of cards here. Maybe a existential insight will occur while I'm doing this. We'll see. I do think Munich is a good movie. I think Spielberg was cooking with that one for sure. All right, here we go. We've got a military asset, the AMX 30 tank. Look at these bad boys. Look at these hunks of metal. Huh? We love our tanks, don't we? We love our armor. The AMX 30 main battle tank made by the French, was used by both coalition and Iraqi forces during Operation Desert Storm. Weird, again, how that happens. How the Iraqis get a hold of all this Western technology. Odd. It's weird how Hitler too got a hold of all this Western military technology. I'm sure he stole it or something. He carries a crew of 4 and has an infrared light system for night operations. Designed in the late 1960s, it has a 105 millimeter gun and a turret-mounted 7.62 millimeter machine gun. It's French, so it's probably bad at fighting. Am I right? Manufacturer: Atelier de Construction Rosin. Speed 40.4 miles per hour. Range 373 miles. Armaments: 105 millimeter main gun, 20 millimeter coastal cannon. Cool. Coastal cannon, nice. And a 7.62 millimeter machine gun with a crew of 6 hanging out in there, eating brie. You got a military skill: collect and report information. This is very important, obviously. This is very important. Collecting and reporting information. When soldiers are on patrol, they are to report anything of interest to their leader. U.S. Army Rangers remember how and what to report by using the letters of the word salute. S. Size: the number of personnel of size or size of subject or object. A. Activity: what they were doing. L. Location: grid coordinates or reference point. U. Unit: clothing, patches, symbols, or ID numbers. T. Time: when the activity occurred. E. Equipment: all equipment associated with the activity. Oh, that's nice. They gave him a little mnemonic device. That's adorable. We got personnel. We got the narcs of the police, we got the narcs of the army, the military police, the Jack Reachers, if you will. Whether it is the shore patrol in the U.S. Navy, I am the motherfucking shore patrol, motherfucker, Jack Nicholson. The airport police of the U.S. Air Force, or the military police in the U.S. Army. Air police sounds way cooler than I bet it actually is. Each of the jurisdictions to enforce the Uniform Code of Regulations on all service member personnel. Off military reservations, civilian jurisdiction takes precedence, but major crimes committed on military reservations are investigated by the military police, the Judge Advocate's Office, and the Federal Bureau of Investigations, like JAG, like NCIS. Here's a guy. Here's a leader. Yeah, are there going to be a space police for the Space Force? We got Mikhail Gorbachev, one of the biggest chumps in the 20th century. Not a bad guy, I really don't think. I think a well-intentioned person, but fundamentally a chump. He thought, okay, we're gonna end communism, and as a reward, you, the West, are going to help us transition into a social democratic economy integrated, like the rest of Europe, into the American system. And the United States said, "Oh, that's adorable. No, you are outside of the imperial sphere. You are being encountered by the mothership, and you will be broken and turned into scrap like everybody else." And he didn't see that one coming. Gorbachev, who is known for his innovative improvements and new ideas, that's for sure, became the youngest member of the Politburo in 1980 and General Secretary of the Communist Party, head of the USSR in 1985. He instituted the policies of glasnost and perestroika, openness and rebuilding, and was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1990. During Operation Desert Storm, he tried to negotiate Iraq's withdrawal from Kuwait. How'd that go, Mikhail? Born Prisonovially near Stavropol, USSR. Stavropol. Birthday, March 2nd, 1931. Education, Moscow State University, Moscow, USSR. Yeah, RIP to that guy. He didn't get that the only reason that we had built that beautiful social democratic citadel in Western Europe was to contain and undermine the communist Russians. As soon as communism is demobilized, there is no incentive to do anything other than piece by piece break down every piece of public goods in existence, starting where the resistance will be lightest. And of course, that's outside of the machine itself. So countries being integrated into it, like Russia, get to be liquidated. And then, of course, they leave in power this structure, hundreds of millions of people, thousands of nuclear missiles, and a modern military, and says to them, yeah, now enjoy vassal status. What are they going to do? They're going to see if the buttons work. Astounding lack of foresight by the U.S. But again, no blowback is actually blowback because even if the results are unintended, they are always then turned into opportunities because of the commanding position, because the ability to act that is monopolized by the United States at the global level. That means every situation can be turned to your uh, best interests, which is one of the reasons that people who reason backwards about every social revolt in the world as having to be an American op because as it unfolds, the United States ends up benefiting from it is ridiculous. It is it's childlike thinking. America dominates because any spontaneous and meaning and sincere social resistance is going to be unorganized and probably defeated. But the pressure on the state that uh, it creates will persist and can be exploited by the one power that can act, the United States. Sometimes the United States orchestrates things when it has to, but for the most part, it doesn't have to. And that's one of the things that like super black pill conspiracy people uh, who think they're telling you like deep hard truths are actually being incredibly naive because they assume that the United States has to have that level of conspiratorial interference going on in order to benefit from everything. Not that its role as imperial hegemon makes that the default state everywhere. And we can't blame Gorby too much though, because the USSR really was French fried and fucked by that point, and there was going to be some sort of crisis, some sort of challenge, you know. But the way he went about it, not the right way. This is Iceland here. I don't know. Again, all the fucking Scandinavian countries run together. I don't know if we have this one before. I don't think so. Lying on the North Atlantic, Iceland is located on islands built of recent volcanic activity. The Icelandic parliament, the Althing, is the oldest surviving government of its type in the world, dating from about 930. Since Iceland was neutral during World War II, it was not allowed to join the United Nations until 1946. For Operation Desert Storm, Iceland supplied economic support. Geographic area 39,789 square miles. Population 250,000. Language Icelandic. Predominant religious evangelical Lutheranism, everyone's favorite kind. Capital Reykjavik. Government type Constitutional Republic. Head of government Prime Minister Steingrimur Hermannsson. Uh, I don't know what economic support. Herring? Did they send him some fish? Did they send him some cod that they won in the cod war with England? The Icelanders are interesting. They did have a very advanced early form of democracy, as you could imagine in a situation where there's just no pre-existing hierarchy, because you know that's how uh, we get like the transition from feudalism to democracy taking as long as it does is because you have this slave society that its political authority collapses, but the uh, disparities in control of resources persists, and so those become classes that persist. And in fucking Iceland, there's a bunch of people showing up with a couple of thralls and some fucking bearskins. But they have, I know in Iceland, there's a big book that shows how everyone is related to one another, so you can make sure that you're not dating a first cousin or something. They really need to do like some sort of uh, Midsommar style uh, genetic diversity program, because otherwise it's going to be a problem. All right, we've got another piece of equipment. We've got the old CH-46 Sea Knight. Look at this bad boy. We got the Sea Knight. I see a knight right here, that's for sure. Whether transporting combat-ready Marines ashore during amphibious assault, transporting cargo and munitions, or bringing 15 litters of wounded aboard a hospital ship, the Sea Knight has served both the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Marines for almost 3 decades. From Vietnam to the Persian Gulf, this versatile twin-rotor helicopter has proven its durability. It played a vital role in Operation Desert Storm, including sea rescue of downed Allied pilots. Manufacturer, Boeing helicopter. Speed, 167 miles per hour. Range, 75 miles. Armament, 2 50 caliber machine guns or 7.62 millimeter machine guns. Crew of 3, 25 troops. I like the guys with the 2 rotors. They're cool. They're big fat boys. We love them. All right, we've got the Newport class tank landing ship, otherwise known as an LST. Larger and faster than the classic LST workhorses of World War II amphibious landings, LSTs are the Newport Newport class are the first to depart from the drop bow door and use a 112-foot ramp to land tanks and cargo vehicles onto beaches. A gate at the stern enables offloading amphibious vehicles into the water. The Newport LST 1179 and the Fairfax County LST 1193, both out of Norfolk, Virginia, were part of Operation Desert Storm. Displacement, 8,450 tons fully loaded. Length, 522 feet. Speed, 22 knots. Armament, 4 50 caliber machine guns and 1 Phalanx CIWS. Crew, 250 with 400 troops it can carry. We love to land an amphibious group in the littoral region. We love a good littoral region. There's so many good words related to rivers and estuaries. Brackish, one of the best ones. Brackish, that is water that is mixture of salty and fresh. Brackish, often found at the intersections of rivers and oceans. Brackish is a good one. Littoral. Riparian. Come on, folks. There are very few words better than riparian. Oh, some other ones that are related to water. Benthic. Water-based words, some of the best. Nautical terminology, some of the best we've got. Certainly the more poetic. The way of water. Boatswain. Boats or coxswain. Coxswain, bosun. Poop deck. Stygian, there you go. Stygian's a great word, and it is water related. Got a bosun and a cosin. We've got intelligence file. Conserving energy. Come on, folks, let's do it. Let's conserve energy. Let's do it, please. Light bulb on. Dependence on oil from the Persian Gulf can be reduced by conserving energy. Fuck you! How dare you? Fuck you. Some simple energy-saving steps include keeping tires inflated to recommended pressure, shutting fireplace vents, closing curtains during summer and opening them during winter, and changing or cleaning furnace air conditioner litters regularly. This is the WEF bug-eating agenda right here. This is Agenda 21. This is the 15-minute city. This is Global Homo right here in card form. How dare you tell me to fucking keep my tires inflated? I will set fire to your home. How do you like that? How do you like that for conserving energy? There was actually a miniature there was like a 2-day news cycle during the 2008 campaign when the O'Bungler was talking about energy conservation, and he said the thing about inflating your tires. He said the thing about, hey, if you're worried about gas prices, you can save gas by keeping your tires inflated, more efficient. And McCain went absolutely sicko mode on him. He was like, inflate your tires? What? And then he actually had a little moment where they were holding up tire gauges at McCain rallies to just try to mock and belittle Obama. It didn't really work. Most people kind of ignored it, but it was definitely a thing that triggered conservatives, telling them to keep their tires inflated. Because, you're claiming that, like, what liberals don't get is that when they say something that is just reasonable common sense, like, they are appealing to an authority that they are constituent of. Like, people who are alienated from the cultural zeitgeist, the way conservatives are, they have been since the 60s, since the Cultural Revolution of the 1960s and 70s. Uh, things like common sense, things like general consensus scientific ideas become tools of an enemy power, really, that wields those things over you. So when you tell them to do something, they go insane. Like there were stories in California. I don't know if they still do this, but for a while they would send you, and they may have stopped for this reason. They send you, if you consumed less than like the average consumer during a given period, less energy, they would send you a card congratulating you. They'd say you use less energy than the average Californian in the third quarter. Thank you very much. There were people who got that and then self-consciously used more energy, which is a thing that a liberal could never conceive of. Getting a pat on the back from an objective observer about how good you are, that's crack. A head pat from teacher. Conservatives now think the teacher is full of shit. The teacher's on the enemy side, and has been since they fucking took over the schools after the 60s and 70s. They couldn't take over the institutions, so they took over the schools instead. Uh, and that whole time, they just thought they were continuing a liberal consensus tradition that had been established by World War II. And they were. But what they didn't realize is that the entire time that liberal consensus was being was persisting throughout the world, throughout the country, and being metabolized by its citizens, there was always a thread of like vituperative alienation from it, like starting even before the social revolution of the 60s and 70s. Around like George Birch Society figures around small American manufacturers and like hard pressed small business owners in the Midwest, specifically. Ohio, of course, the home of Robert Taft, being like the beating heart of this reaction, this Main Street Republican hostility to the New Deal state and cultural apparatus. The thing was, though, for most of the 20th century, it was a fringe group. It wasn't even a majority of Republicans. And they occasionally were able to do things like hustle their way to inflicting Barry Goldwater on the Republican Party in 1964. But that was like a anomaly and an expression of like a concentrated organizing capacity that events hadn't caught up to yet. But then the 70s hits, which is a crisis not just culturally but also economically, that births out of it a new disempowered working class that has had its back effectively broken, its ability to negotiate politically for gains permanently removed, and a new cultural reality based on the racial and gender ideas that the rebellious youth had proposed in the 60s and 70s. And when you have that, now a movement that had been restricted to a specific class strata, medium-sized owners from shopkeepers to factory owners, now encompass not only a bigger chunk of the rich, but a who are now invested in a political program that would enrich them, but also among workers who were no longer able to assert uh, political power as workers, but could interact with politics as just an American subject, shorn of class interests, who was alienated for cultural reasons from the consensus that emerged out of the 60s and 70s. The cultural politics on top of the new neoliberal economic machinery. And now we're in a situation where a solid 40% of Americans of all different races and specifically classes have a fundamental alienation from not just liberal values, but all the institutions that they associate with liberal values, which is now basically all of them. And again, the John Birch Society was there in 1952, but that was a bunch of cranky, like chocolate candy manufacturers. It was a network of cranks stewing in their offices and thinking about how their fucking employees were all gold bricking on them, and who were not getting the real benefits, or at least could not imagine themselves receiving the real benefits that Wall Street got from opening up Europe after World War II. Now that's a generalized hostility. And that means that you can no longer assert any apolitical, objective uh, judgment towards people. They will take it politically. So you cannot tell them to not to blow up their tires or to conserve energy or do anything else that just makes sense, including, of course, take a vaccine. Don't want to talk about that shit. I literally don't care because I can't know any better. All I know is that traditionally, hey, there's a disease. Here's a fucking vaccine for it. We did it really quickly so that we could get it out there as fast as possible. Would have been accepted by 90% of the population. Not saying it would have been right or wrong. I don't care. Shut up. Not doing my own research. I refuse. I'm saying that that sequence of events would have been unquestioned by most people. All right, we got a leader here. Oh, very crucial to the war effort. Very important. We've got Brian Mulroney, Prime Minister of Canada. Brian motherfucking Mulroney, the PM of Canada of the Conservative Party. Or, I'm sorry, they were the Progressive Conservative Party. My favorite and most Canadian political party name, the Progressive Conservative Party. It really makes them sound like a post-colonial government in like Africa or the Middle East, where you have those kind of goofy named parties, like the radical liberals or whatever. Or no, like well, here's a good example. In Jamaica, I think it is the Labour Party is the right wing party. After being a lawyer in Montreal, Mulroney became an executive at Iron Ore Co. in Canada in 1976, president in 1977. A literal oil executive. That's so funny that you guys just honestly had the fucking the Daniel Plainview of Alberta just be the president. Like whatever. He was elected to Parliament as the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party in 1983. When the ruling party changed, he was promoted to Prime Minister in 1984. Born Bay-Coronneau near Quebec City, Canada. Birth date March 20th, 1939. Education Saint Francis Xavier University, Antigonish, Nova Scotia, Canada. Laval University, Quebec, Quebec, Canada. So this is very interesting. You got a guy Mulroney, uh, presumably an Anglo from Quebec. What's going on? Uh, the United States was not the only Western Hemisphere country to get a lot of Irish Catholic immigrants during the 19th and early 20th centuries. Canada got them too, but thanks to the religious divide in Canada, they largely settled in Quebec because it was Catholic. And a place like, say, for example, Toronto was literally run by the Orange Order until the 1960s. And in fact, Ireland and Quebec were actually very similar political and economic units. They were both stagnant, backward economies whose educational system, welfare system, and in a large sense, economy was dominated by the Catholic Church, which, of course, is allergic to the sort of dynamism that bourgeois Protestant capitalism inculcates in an area. And so you had a situation where Quebec was the poorest part of Canada, much poorer than the white part. Sorry, it's sounding like I'm an Orangeman there. The English speaking part, the orange part, and you had the situation where they were a total backwater. In Ireland, they were like, "Good, that's fine, fuck you," because they were independent. But in Canada, they were part of this. They were stitched to this fucking Anglo monster, and so they felt the need to compete. And so they were jump started into a competitive economics relationship to the rest of Canada, to Anglo Canada, by what is known as the Quiet Revolution. By the way, who is the Laval that everything in Quebec is named after? The university, I saw a street named after it. It's not Pierre Laval, the prime minister of the Vichy Republic, is it? It's got to be some Canadian, but I don't know which one. I don't know them. I'm not my Canadian history, especially before the 20th century, is not that great. Like Louis Riel and all that stuff, I don't really know that much about it. So the Quiet Revolution is this process by which the hands of the Catholic Church are slowly released from the main currents of French Canadian society. Like their control over education is removed. Their control over welfare systems. And there is this injection of dynamism into the Quebec economy. They create a hydroelectric company, Quebec Hydro, that is like the basis for like a new sort of provincial economy. And of course, by doing this, they jumpstart a bourgeoisification of their society. And what happens? You get bourgeois nationalism. So almost the same moment you're getting the Quiet Revolution, you're getting the Front de Liberation de Quebec emerge to do like a IRA style, ETA style terrorist attack uh, on the Canadian state, and then the broader move towards uh, a separatist politics around the figure of René Lebesgue, who's sort of a French Rush Limbaugh style guy who becomes the premier in the 70s. But this process, this bourgeoisification, it happens everywhere, but only when it is forced into being. I think that's the only way to understand capitalist development. It will not emerge independently because wherever social forces can assert themselves, they will. And in a place like Quebec, in a place like Ireland, where you are able to stagnate in a way that advanced capitalist societies and also post-colonial dominated societies can't. And that's the result of being strong enough as an independent polity to resist full colonization. The Irish by literally having a fucking war in the early 20th century, and the French just by being so goddamn French all the time. Uh, and either way, though, these are Catholic polities in a way that is now literally anachronistic. Like nobody else was. Uh, Spain, speaking of this process, was in the same situation in the late 19th century, but its position as one of the like main competitor states in Europe, as opposed to a peripheral region like Ireland or Quebec, was forced into a pell mell sprint towards modernity that broke the country in half. Ireland and Montreal were gifted the ability to sort of do it at their own pace. And of course, Quebec does it first because they have more of a direct cultural and economic conflict with this greater Canadian polity they're part of. which the Irish didn't have to worry about. But they still, by the end of the 20th century, were pushed in that direction inevitably, just by, among other things, the fear of brain drain. People are just going to all leave again because what is considered the good life is no longer defined by the church. In a globalized world, it's defined by consumption and the ability to do that. And a traditional Catholic society cannot provide as much of an opportunity for that to happen. And so it has to be broken up. And it will be broken up from within to persist so that its national identity, which supersedes everything post 19th century, honestly, since Westphalia, can dominate. Like just the fact that the French curse words are all religious blasphemies from the 1700s tells you what's going on. Like France was the same time that some French people essentially pressed eject on the collapsing French state and were able to create a little pocket France in the wilderness, where the fact that it's wilderness and the fact that it's expropriated from others means that those social ferments are allayed for a bit, and so people can just keep being French. In France itself, that cannot be. By the late 1700s, you have social ferment explode into outright revolution, spurred by economic collapse. Why? Because France could no longer spend at the same level that England could, because it lost its colonies in the 7 Years' War. Someone says I have bad Ireland takes. Please tell me what I got wrong. All right, last card. Geography. Baghdad. Oh boy. Baghdad. A relatively young city. You think, oh, it's the Middle East. It must be super ancient. No, it's one of the first real early modern project cities was the Abbasid Empire, or the Abbasid Dynasty, Abbasid Dynasty, building that Baghdad as a ready-made capital. Built by Caliph al-Mansur in 1762, in the design of three concentric circular walls surrounding the palace, armed guards, and the city, Baghdad became one of the major trade centers of the Muslim world. After being captured by British forces from Turkey in 1917, Baghdad became the capital of the new Kingdom of Iraq in 1921. During Operation Desert Storm, Baghdad was attacked by air almost every day. You're goddamn right. You're goddamn right it was. Fuck those people, right? Blow them the fuck up. But I gotta say, we still did not do them as dirty as the fucking Mongols did, okay? The Mongols went ham on Baghdad to a degree that is genuinely world historical. It all started because the Caliph made the terrible decision to execute some of uh, the Mongol diplomats who came to talk to them and demand their fealty. Always the wrong thing to do. It never works out for you. So they decided to go in there and just kill everybody. They stacked the bodies, 200,000 people perhaps. And man, then they destroyed the library of this center of Muslim learning. They say that the Tigris River was not red with blood, it was black from the ink of all the volumes that were thrown into it. Not good, folks. So we didn't do that, right? We're all right. Just because we let all of their great treasures get looted and destroyed their infrastructure, uh, armed and trained a bunch of psychotic death squads. Population 4.65 million. Founded in 8th century AD. Location central Iraq on the Tigris River, 330 miles from the Persian Gulf. Significance capital. It's the capital, folks. It's the capital. Tell you right now, I am always swearing fealty to the Mongols when they show up. Always, 100% of the time. There's a 50-50 chance that they're just on a scouting mission and they'll just leave anyway. Unless you're in China. And if you're in China, they're here to stay, and you just need to accept that. But like if you're, like how many the Russians or the Poles or anybody, you go out there and you pick these fights, and it's like you could have just stayed home and just given them some fucking fealty, and you probably never would have seen them again. There wasn't enough goddamn grass to feed all the horses in Europe. And yeah, like they were checked in the Middle East. They were famously defeated by the Mameluke army in the I don't think it was in Egypt. I think it was in what is now Israel. They beat them. So who's to say that they ever would have even stuck around the fucking desert? Instead, you got to fucking stand up for yourself and then get annihilated. Pledge allegiance to the great Khan, okay? If I'm your eunuch advisor, I'm gonna wear a T-shirt with that on it every day, just in case that you heard tale that the Khan's forces are near. We love the Khan, don't we, folks? The great Khan. They call him great for a reason. Really tremendous. I mean, he might kill you anyway, but you're definitely going down if he decides to make you a project. Let's not forget Kublai. Kublai Khan. Kublai. Speaking of Canada, why did Norman Bethune do all the crazy shit he did and get himself killed in 1930s China? Because he was a G? I mean, he was a G. The guy was a fucking five-star pimp, the answer to that question. And the thing is, you can't judge yourself to those standards because there are very few of them. They're apples in the rough, and he was one of them. Apples in the rough, that's not an expression. How are you going to, for example, just example, how are you going to say no to a group called the Golden Horde? Come on. It's literally golden. All right. Good to be back. Should be back next week. Talk to you then, folks. Take it sleazy.